Butler from State Farm and to Simeon Dole from Phoenix Risk Management for joining us and just bringing in your experience as part of recruiting and working in the industry in terms of networking for students. Any recommendations that come out of this, I know that will be very valuable. So as I said, Simi and Edgar are our panelists today, and well, first I would just like to ask you to introduce yourselves in a short way, and we can start having a conversation about the art of networking.
I can go first because I'm unmuted, I see, based off of the icons there. My name is Simeon Dole. Thank you for the introduction, Alejandro and Georgia State, for having me on. I'm excited to share what I know about networking, and if there's anything that you find helpful, or if you have some follow-up questions or comments, I'd be happy to engage with students afterwards. About me, I graduated from Johns Hopkins in 2011 in chemical engineering. I went on to not do anything in chemical engineering following that, including starting in IT for ABB. And it's a large conglomerate based in Europe that had a software arm that's based. And I did that for 3 years. I was a database developer for 3 years, went on to do IT consulting for a couple years after that. And then afterwards, my dad knocked on my door and said, "Hey, you want to start a business with me?" And pretty strong networking right there, where he was able to pull me in, and I definitely had an inside inner circle connection there. And we did that 3 years ago with 0 clients, $0 revenue. We are an independent insurance care agency, excuse me. And we didn't have any appointments with carriers, didn't have a building or a logo or a brand or anything. Certainly not to the extent of State Farm. And since then, we've been able to bring 1,000 clients on board. And we have over 10 carriers and a few employees sprinkled around the Southeast, and we do business in 10 states. Networking has been really important in my career, so I'm really happy to share my networking experience. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely, thank you for coming. And Edgar, you're there, right?
Yes. And so my name is Edgar Butler. I'm a talent brand specialist with State Farm. I was non-traditional student, so did a couple of years, went out into the working world. My background before coming to State Farm was all in warehouse work. And so I was given an opportunity to come to State Farm. I've been with State Farm now 12 years, and this is the 8th position that I've been in. And so definitely understand the art of networking and how to use that to build your career and further your career as well, get established in your career. And so I've started out in entry-level position of barely getting into State Farm. I've been in ad services. I've been in personal lines underwriting. I've been in commercial underwriting, claims, as well as leadership. I was the position that I had prior to coming over to HR. I was leading a team of underwriters that had handled half the country for our commercial division. And then I came over to HR to do recruiting. And so again, just understanding the art of networking and how that helps you continue to further your career, establish your career, and get to where you want to be at. So I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you very much. And absolutely, I think that we couldn't have had any two better invites or any two better panelists today. So I would just like to get started. And my first question is, why do you think networking is important? And even more right now during this pandemic and with everything that is happening. Either one of you can take first and the other one can go next.
So I can jump in and go ahead and go. And so I think networking is important regardless of the climate, right? And so one of the things that I like to share with students and others that are looking for an opportunity is, networking actually, I like to separate it, networking and relationship building. All right. Networking is what you do when you first connect with someone. That is like we're doing networking right now. Like you have my name, I have your name. We may provide some information for those that are on the call. That's networking. But I like to say we need to take that a step further and make sure that we're building relationships, right? It's good to network and it's good to have a lot of people that you can call on, but networking gets you to the door. Relationship building can get you in the door. So it's taking that a step further. And I think is regardless of the climate that we're in, that networking and relationship building is definitely important. Is because and I think one statistic was 80% of the people that get hired, they either know someone that works in the company or they have a family member that works in the company. And so we've seen how beneficial that is just through historical data of how beneficial that is with getting, your career started, as well as what Simi shared about creating businesses and helping you to build up your clientele. And so that's just a part of the society that we're in. And right now, with us not being able to physically interact with people and get into their physical presence, it just kicks it up a notch of how do you go about networking and building those relationships.
Well said, Edgar. I couldn't really add more in terms of the theoretical side. I will say from a practical side or from my own experience, you look at my career, it's 100% networking. Starting with college, my tennis coach in high school, he talked to the college coach at Johns Hopkins University where I attended, and that's how I was introduced. Out of college, I talked to my Phi Delta Theta fraternity brother over LinkedIn when I joined the Atlanta networking group when I was coming back to Atlanta, and he helped me get a job at ABB, my entry-level job. When I went to Clarkson Consulting, I had a connection through my literal brother, my blood brother, for the person that actually introduced me to Clarkson Consulting. And then we already touched on it, but I started a family insurance agency, and of course there's, I don't know if you'd call it networking, but yeah, it was definitely a relationship there that led to that opportunity. So throughout my career, every step along the way has been due to networking.
Okay, so from what I get from what you've said up till now is, well, for you, Simi, it has been like everything in your career, like it's gotten you further in your career. And from what Edgar said, I like what you said about networking is the first step, and then building relationships is the next part in order to get into the door. So I think that you both mentioned how from networking and knowing someone you get to build a relationship with them and then get in the door towards your next step in your career. And what recommendations do you have in that particular sense to convert that networking, that initial step, into relationships? And now that many times it has to be virtually, like through virtual calls or even phone calls or remotely, it's not easy to get together with people. Taking that into account, what kind of recommendations do you have for students?
So for me, the taking a step further piece is, again, like, okay, if on this call, I give you my information, right? So you know my name, we ask each other questions. To me, that's the networking piece. But guess what? Everybody on this call, so if we had 50 members on this call, right, or 50 people attending this call, everybody got the same information. We interacted in the same way. So if I put up a job posting and I only have 2 spots, well, if all 50 of you apply for that, how do I choose just based on this interaction? It is the person to me that takes it a step further, that takes my information, takes my business card, and follows up with me, connects on LinkedIn, maybe sends me an email, hey, Edgar, I really appreciated the time. Tell me something that may have stuck out to you, and then let's continue that on. And so I do get the question sometimes is, how often should I follow up with you? And to me, like, it's not a schedule when you're talking about building a relationship, right? If you're dating someone, we don't say, yeah, I'm going to see you every Sunday, or I'm going to see you every Tuesday, right? It's about just, it's organic. And so taking those opportunities to just reach out, maybe when certain things are going on within your life, or, hey, Edgar, you mentioned doing X, Y, and Z, and I did that, and I just want to let you know the results. And so just taking that time to continue to connect with that person, and as that person, and as you get to know them, and as they get to know you, that's what starts to build and take it from a networking of just, hey, I saw you on the webinar, to now, hey, Edgar, I know you, right? I know a little bit more about you. You know a little bit more about me. You know the classes that I'm taking. You know the interests that I have. And so within that, we start to organically build something that goes beyond just this first communication. And so where I separate the two is, if I have someone that I have been connecting with over and over, and I know their interests, and I know that they're interested in this role, and then I've given them tips to work on, and they've done those things. If I put up a position, right, and the person that I met one time on a webinar goes up against the person that has continuously connected with me and continuously gotten information with me, and I've shared what we're looking for in that role, and they've done everything to position themselves for that role, now to me, that person that has done all of those things, in my mind, they're probably going to position themselves a little bit better than the person that I just met one time. So that's where I go to, how do we take it from the networking to the relationship building, is that continuous interaction over time organically.
Absolutely. And Simi, what was your experience in terms of all your relationships that started from a networking perspective?
Sure. I would again echo what Edgar is saying, agree with him 100%. From my relationships and my experience, I would add on a kind of a third tier to what Edgar was talking about. There's networking, there's relationships on a professional level. Then I would say there's relationships on a personal level. What do I mean by that? It's not just that, hey, Simi does a great job, or person from webinar does a great job and he gets back to me, or she gets back to me regularly. He does what he says he's going to do. He's got skills X, Y, and Z. If there's a personal relationship aspect to that, communication, and you develop that, that takes it even a step further. For me, it was tennis and my brother's relationship at Clarkson Consulting, my second job out of college. And right off the bat, there was nothing professional there as such, but we both shared an interest. We knew someone in common, and we went over like past experiences where my brother would do crazy things, and we could we can throw him some shade together. And then with Batch, the first guy that helped me get my job out of college, it was Phi Delta Theta, the fraternity. There was a personal investment in what we had in common that actually went the extra mile. And same with my tennis slash getting into Johns Hopkins. That was through a personal relationship. So I would say beyond the professional side, think about the human that you're actually talking to. Think about the interests that they have, and how can you develop that relationship to take it a step further.
I love it, the way you both put it, and I totally agree with it. My experience has been very similar to that. It's easy to fall into the trap of just reaching out to somebody that works at a company you would like to work, because I know out of college, a lot of students' main goal is to get a job, or get the job they want or they like. But sometimes it requires a little bit of preparation. And I think that the best thing to do it is, as Simi said, looking for those connections. I mean, connections or things in common that you might have with other people, because they are still human beings, and it's easier to approach, and it's easier to be approachable when somebody is like, for me, for example, from my perspective, I'm an international student, so it's been easier to connect with people that were born in the same country I was born. Because we have something in common. You know, it's easier to, hey, I was born in Colombia and I saw you came here to the US and did this and that, and I'm interested in just getting having a call with you, having a chat, and getting to know how you got where you are. That's when many informational interviews come into play, not necessarily like hey, we have this in common, so can you give me a job? I think that's important to have a clear difference between networking and what might be or what might sound like interested just on what they can give to you as in their position. So I think it's important to look for those connections and definitely get to know them as a person. Eventually, as Edgar said, eventually when they have an open position, they might think of you because they already have a relationship with you. They have you in the top of their minds. So it might be easier for them. So I totally agree with what you said. So that being said, after you've had a relationship, how do you ask for support or recommendations when you are networking online with people you met through a webinar or you met last year in a career fair or some things like that?
Well, I would say the beauty of as you're building that organic relationship, I know your interests, right? So if we're continuously connecting, that's where I'm finding out about your interests. And that is the difference between, again, the networking of someone that I just met and we haven't had time to have conversations and those things. We just met one time. So yeah, you could tell me this is what you're interested in, but if I don't know much about you, I don't know what you bring to the table. I don't know classes you're taking. I don't know what you do outside of work. Like I don't know much else about the person. That's the difference between the person that is organically building that relationship. And so I have a quick example I'll share. I met a student one time. I was down at school. So as a talent brand specialist, I go to different college campuses and help recruit for interns, full-time and part-time positions, as well as help with working with nonprofits in the community. And so I was down at a college, and a student going to class. I had a table set up there, and he was an actuarial student. He said, "Hey, I'm on my way going to class, but can I follow up with you, after this?" I gave him my card. Sure enough, the following week, he sent me an email, right? Like I think Monday morning, and said, "Hey, Edgar, I connected with you. We met at the tabling session. Just wanted to follow back up with you. Can we set up a phone meeting?" Sure. Set up a phone meeting. Talked for a little while. He told me he's getting ready to take an actuarial exam. I say, "Okay, let me know when you knock it out of the park." Sure, about a month or so later, he sends me another email. "Hey, Edgar, just letting you know, I completed my first exam, my actuarial exam. I passed it." I'm like, amazing. Like, just keep me posted on how things are going. A couple months go by, boom, he sends me another email. "Hey, Edgar, just came from studying abroad. Would love to catch up with you just to let you know how my experience went." I'm like, unbelievable, right? This kid's a freshman. And to start the networking and to do exactly what we talk about with building the relationship, he did it organically. All right. Hey, he sends me another email. I just did an internship with Humana. Would love to catch up with you and let you know how it's going. I heard you all are coming down, to the school. Let's see if we can catch up. That's the organic building the relationship at that time. So for me, like, there was nothing set, no set schedule. He took the opportunities to let me know what he had going on within his life. He let me know where his interest lies because we continue to connect. And just through those conversations, I knew what he was interested in. So as soon as we had an opportunity that came up that fit everything that he had already told me he was interested in, he's the first person that popped on my mind. So I'm going to bat for him, right? I'm going to the managers like, "Hey, this is somebody we really need to take a look at," because of the fact that he took the opportunity to connect with time, but take it a step like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps further and built that relationship with me. So now, like, anytime I see him, anytime I get an email from him, like, I'm automatically going to answer that. I'm automatically going to take time out with him because he built that relationship and I know his interest and where it lies. And not only that, I know his interest, but I know what he brings to the table as well. And that's one of the reasons I'm willing to vouch for.
Sure, I can. Oh, Alejandro, I think you're muted.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for that. And were you saying something to me?
Yeah, I was saying that I would agree with what Edgar, circle back to what I was saying before as well, about on top of developing the professional relationship, which that student knocked it out of the park as a freshman. That's amazing to hear that students are taking that level of initiative and follow up. I definitely didn't have that level of professional skills on my freshman year. But beyond that, think about especially as the job market, I would assume, is going to get tougher to apply to, given that there's more people out of work, there's a higher unemployment rate, and there's going to be less positions. The personal relationships are really going to matter. How do you develop that personal relationship? So someone that is looking through 100 applicants, and a lot of them are going to do, I envision a lot of them are going to do what Edgar is describing with that student, given that there's less opportunities. How do you develop a personal relationship? Think of it as much as work in talking to you, but instead it's actually pleasure. It's someone that is an acquaintance, that might be a friend that you are on friendly terms with. For me, having a conversation with my friend, I'll have it any time of the day, weekend, whatever. But if it's just someone that is just asking me about a job and it's just professionally related, I think there's a limitation, and I put barriers on that, on when I am going to engage in that type of conversation. So that's one thing that I've learned in my experience, and it's been, maybe it's specific to my experience because all of the relationships when it comes to networking have been close relationships that I've had throughout my career. But I would not discount the ability, especially in a tightening labor market, to be able to develop a personal relationship with the recruiter or with someone at that company that will be able to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's probably not a single route to doing good networking or effective networking, just because it depends. It depends on many situations. There's one question here from Tamika asking about how often do you suggest connecting with someone trying to build an organic relationship, because of course there's a difference between being persistent and being a pest. So I know that sometimes, as you said, you might feel that if somebody is just pushing and pushing, asking you for a job and asking you for an interview and asking you for a position, and if there's anything available, probably it becomes a little bit or quite annoying after a while. But if it is something more like a relationship, as you said, it can be better. I mean, you might have different opinions on this, but as Edgar said, it doesn't depend too much on the frequency. Probably it maybe depends more about the opportunity and what are your conversation starters? What are you asking about? Do you want to talk about with these people? I know that it is important to reach out and to send an email once in a while. If they said, for example, reach out back to me in 2 weeks, then should I wait a couple days if they haven't responded and reach back out in a couple weeks? It all depends probably, and I'll give you the word in a bit to see if you have some other insight on this question for Tamika. And the other one is about the tools that can be used to keep up with the interactions with the contacts, because right now we're in a climate that a lot of things are virtual, a lot of things are remote or remotely done. So I guess that some platforms, for some social media platforms, are good for this. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with people, and as Edgar said at the beginning, like, start that network and then start building the relationship in other possible ways. So in terms of this frequency, if you have any comments, feel by all means let us know. And in terms of what tools do you recommend students using, also any recommendations are welcome.
Yep. So in regards to the frequency, again, just the organic piece of it, and I there's a couple of things, and I think Simeon may have mentioned it in one of these, or Alejandro may have mentioned it, but if there's an ask that the person that you've connected with, if they state some things that you should do or some suggestions, right? And so after you've done those things, it may be a good idea to follow back up with them and kind of let them know, right? The same way with the student when he told me that he was going to be taking the exam, and I said, let me know when you knock it out of the park. Okay, he did exactly that. After he finished and completed the exam and passed, he got back in contact with me. Maybe there are certain things that we may talk about you doing, of going to get signed up for something. And so after you do that, you may want to follow up with that person just to let them know. Because to me, that shows a genuine interest in the time that we've spent, as well as you're not only respecting the time, but you're saying like, okay, hey, like I did exactly what you asked me to do, so I'm invested in this relationship. So it's not just you're giving me information and I'm not doing anything with it. And so if those opportunities come up to where there was some actionable items that you can do after you take action on those items, it may be a good idea to follow back up with them and just kind of let them know what the outcome was. Or you may just set it in your mind yourself to say, hey, I'm gonna put this on the calendar. I spoke with Edgar on this day. I'll follow back up with him in another month. Or maybe he told me to connect back with him in 2 weeks. And so you can set calendar reminders for those things. If you're following them on LinkedIn, I say don't just follow them. Don't just connect with them just for the sake of connecting. Like, look at some of the posts that they may be putting up. Comment on the post. Interact with them that way as well. So you can take several channels in order to interact with people. And then the other thing is, the difference between, being persistent in the pest piece. And I do get this a lot of, hey, I don't want to, bug you. Again, if I give you my information, I've opened up the door for you to connect with me. And that to me, I get that the shyness, but in this environment, going back to what Simi said, it is going to be very competitive. So if a person opens up the door and provides you with their information, take them up on it. Because just in your mind where you're thinking, man, I don't want to be a pest, in some people's mind, they may be thinking, I'm looking to see who's actually going to take me up on this. I went into classrooms and I've gave my card to 30 something students, and the teacher will come and say, how many do you think I'm going to follow up? And I say, probably 2 or 3. And she was like, you're serious? Like, I don't believe that. And sure enough, it was like 2. And she was like, I cannot believe this. And it's just like, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast right now. And I come to understand that. So the students that do reach out, right, you're setting yourself apart. And so don't think of it as being a pest if they gave you their information. Like, follow up with them and test and see. Now, I will say this. There are going to be some that you're going to follow up with that you may not get a response from. Guess what? That just may be the case. And that may not be the person that is going to help you get to wherever it is that you're trying to go. Some people are busy. So if you send a response to someone and they don't respond right away, we're getting thousands of emails that are coming in. Don't take it personal, right? So sometimes you may have to follow back up with that person again. But sometimes you may follow up with them 2 times and they may just never respond. That's just the nature of it. Move on to the next person. Do not take it personal. Move on till you continue to find that person that you can network with and genuinely build that relationship with.
Great advice, Edgar. Again, this is a great format. I like Edgar going first. I can just say, hey, he said it. But a couple of things that I would add on to that. In terms of how not to be a pest, no one has ever been a pest to me. So I would agree with Edgar. I have not experienced that on the employer side where I felt like someone was just really bugging me. I've had like separate professional like networking sessions where or communications where someone on LinkedIn that I did not know, I did not have a personal relationship with. I had never spoken with them over the phone or virtually. They kept messaging me, and I honestly, like Edgar said, I ended up ghosting them. That's the only thing that comes to mind. But that's through one channel. He's talking about one thing, and I'd already addressed it actually, saying that at this time I'm not interested. So usually, in my experience, at least on the employer side, I have not experienced an employee that is overeager. So don't err on the side of more communication than less, and that way you'll have a stronger relationship. The second question is what tools are available?
Yeah.
Sure, I would say.
Or what tools do you recommend people using to connect, to start a conversation, that type of stuff?
Right. I would say, I mean, the best tool ultimately for me is a phone call or a virtual call, like what we're having right now. You're not going to develop the same level of relationship with someone over messaging. You're not going to develop the same relationship over an email. When you have a phone call, you hear someone's voice, you hear questions that come up organically. That is something where you actually build a relationship, in my experience. I have not developed a relationship with someone over email or with messaging. In terms of keeping track of your network and people you want to reach out to, I would say, I'm not sure if the question was tailored to that, but I'm a huge fan of Google products. So I would say Google Sheet. You can have a list of people that you think are interested in, that you're interested in communicating with. And more importantly than other people that you do not have a relationship with yet, think about people that you already have a relationship with, that's within your family, your friends, and build that out. Talk about your interests, talk about the things that you're thinking of, because they're going to tell you honest truths and honest advice. And they will also, they're invested in you. They want you to succeed. They have a relationship with you. So they will look out in their network, and you'll have a much better foot in the door with talking to new people that you don't have any relationship with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember the statistic, but I know that there is I don't know if it was like in the past 10 years or something, most people say that or at least like 85 or 75% of the people say that the last job they got, it was because of their network, because they knew somebody that probably knew another somebody, instead of just applying online. I'm not saying that the online applications are not successful. It's just that thousands of applicants might apply for the same job posting. And as Edgar said, it's difficult to start filtering out because a lot of people can be great for the position, but that person who you know or who you have a relationship with might stand out better than the rest of the applicants. And
real quick, and I'm gonna add something. I want to add something on real quick. I use this example, and it's very generic, but I'll be honest with you, it still does apply. I do recruiting, I do hiring. It still does apply in hiring. So I ask people this question. I say, so if you have a shirt that you want to give away, and your friend comes and says they want the shirt. Now, they don't need it for any reason. They're not, homeless or don't have clothes or anything. They just want the shirt, right? And this is a person that you've known, a friend of yours. Another person comes and says they want the shirt. You don't know this person. Again, they're not home. They don't need the shirt for any reason. They just say they want it, right? So both of them, apples, apples. They just say they want the shirt. Who are you most likely to give it to? More than likely your friend. That's the one that you had a relationship with. I'm gonna be honest with you. In a job situation, people call it nepotism. You can call it whatever you want. But if I know I have a friend that their skill set fits this job, right? I'm not just giving it to them for whatever reason, but their skill set fits this job, and another person that comes and their skill set fits the job, apples to apples. If my friend says that they're interested in the job, I'm more likely to lean towards my friend. I'm gonna just be honest with you. And that's the creating the relationship, building the relationship piece. Going back to what Simeon said, building it up to, it seems to be where it is like a personal relationship, a friendship. So looking at it in that way, I'm going to take my chances of trying to get as close as possible to the person that's hiring, as opposed to just throwing my name in a hat with a piece of paper on a resume and just hope they pick me out.
Yeah, I love that example, just because we're not trying to say like, so make friends and you'll get the job, whatever you want, even if you are not qualified for that, because it's like if both applicants are in the same level, this is just like the differentiating factor. Like you have that relationship, it makes you different. It just gives you a better chance. It won't give you better qualifications, because if you don't have the hard skills, the technical skills that they're looking for, obviously the job shouldn't be given to you. But also it can offset in terms of the rest of the applicants. And here there's a question that is related to that from Leah. She asks about, well, it's a two-part question, but basically if you don't know anybody in the industry, if you don't know somebody in the company that you want to work for, if you're starting basically from scratch, what recommendations can you give a student that doesn't like they're starting their network into that field? For example, she says IT field, from scratch. How do you go about starting a conversation? What conversation starters would you recommend students start using?
I can take this one first. Yeah, that's a good question. One is I would first back up and say, given that you're a student at Georgia State, are you currently taking classes from professors that are in the industry? Because they may have a relationship with a company that is in that industry that you may be able to leverage. So that would be one. Let's say that, like me, you don't go into the industry that you actually were studying, and you don't have that ability to use or leverage professors. I would still probably push that person to look through their network, their family, their friends, professors, even students and professors at Georgia State that are in that industry that they have no relationship with today. At least Georgia State. You're muted right now, Alejandro. You can see.
You were breaking out a little bit.
Okay, sorry
but now
about
I
that.
can hear you.
Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, I would try to still leverage my Georgia State relationship with students, professors that may have industry knowledge, experience, and relationships. Beyond that, let's say that nothing pans out. You're working in this niche industry that you don't have any relationship with. I'll steal some advice that I've heard recently from a Stanford MBA grad, and he actually cold emailed, I think, a dozen or 2 dozen investors and CEOs of companies that were in the industry that he was interested in. And he had an 80% hit rate where they actually responded to his email. And that was because he personalized the email. He talked to one investor about, like, he made some funny remark in the title about like a Kanye West lyric because he knew the investor is a big Kanye West fan. He talked about maybe like a sports team with maybe an owner of a sports team. And he summarized very quickly in that email that, hey, in 2 sentences, this is what I'm doing. I could use a little help. Do you have 15 minutes to chat? So I would say I have not tried that, but apparently it works. So that's something to consider too. Personal touch.
I like that one. That's a good one. I might have to put that in the repertoire as well. For some, I know people like, in certain instances, people may be a little shy, a little nervous about reaching out. So again, going back to what Simeon was saying about, connecting with the professors, that, definitely, because you already have that connection there, right? So you can utilize that. I'm also going to say career services. Career services is a big one because they're interacting with a lot of different corporations and a lot of different people. And so I would definitely encourage you to go to your career services, let them know your interest, and see if they can be that bridge that connects you from, right now where you are to where you're trying to go. So they can connect you with industry professionals, they connect you with corporations, the recruiters in those instances. And so definitely utilizing career services. That's what they're there for. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Then there's also, on your, LinkedIn and those things. LinkedIn is hot right now. Right? I mean, there's a lot of professional people that are on there. There's a lot of individuals with their own businesses that are on LinkedIn. So that's a place in the virtual world. You can look out on places like, Indeed and those type of things to look for those opportunities that may be available with these different companies. But I know if you're looking to develop something on your own, then also look for virtual meetups, right? A lot of people are doing, virtual meetups and those things right now. So what is it, meetup.com and all of those places. So it's going to take for you, even with the email, the cold emailing, it's going to take for you to get out of the mode of like, being shy or this is an opportunity. So if you want it, you're going to have to step outside of your, you know what I'm saying, your shell a little bit. If you're a person that doesn't normally do that, if that doesn't come natural to you, you're going to have to do that. You may need to connect with someone that from that verbal standpoint, or a person that is a little bit more outgoing, you may need them on your team, right, to push the effort forward. So connecting with someone in that way of your close network and seeing if they can help you out, just to be able to build those connections and get, you know, whatever the project is in front of people, so you can take that route as well. But it is going to take for you to step outside of, you know, what you may be normally doing if you haven't built that yet. And then also, I always go back to this, like when you're doing something like that, you cannot be afraid of rejection and you cannot take it personal, right? I mean, that's in this world that we're living in, it's very competitive right now. Like people are losing jobs on a record pace basis. And so you have a lot of qualified people out, skilled people out that are looking for these same opportunities. And so a lot of people are connecting. I get hit up a lot on LinkedIn because my title says HR recruiter. So people are looking to get with State Farm. So I get hit up a lot of times. But don't be afraid of rejection. And if you are afraid of rejection, don't take it personal, right? They like, these people don't know you personally, so it's not a personal thing that they're coming after you on. So just be willing to take that and say, hey, okay, this one didn't work out, I'm just going to move on to this next person, and keep going until you can build those connections and those relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I wanna take what you said about like bridging, and somebody can be the bridge there that you need. And I want to mention that I don't know how many of the people who are in this call have heard about the 6 degrees of separation, but it's basically a theory that the world is uh, it's getting flatter, and it means that we're more connected than ever before in history. And those 6 degrees of separation meant, because it's changing now to like 5 or 4 degrees, it means that in 6 different connections, in 6 different levels of connections, you can potentially connect with anybody around the world. So it just because there's a way to calculate that based on how big are networks right now, how many friends do you have on Facebook and social media, and how many connections you have on LinkedIn. So it means that even if you don't know somebody, the most it can take to reach out to a person is 5 people in between you and that person. That's what the theory of 6 degrees of separation means. And now they said, some statisticians and people who study that are saying that those are getting smaller and smaller to 5 degrees, or I think there was a projection that by 2030, or I don't remember, it's going to be like 4 degrees of separation. So it's getting closer and closer, that knowing a couple of people that might know another somebody that might know another somebody, you can get to talk to basically anybody in the world if you are like proactive enough, and they can connect you with that following level of connection that you want to reach out. All this I say just because, going back to Leah's question about if you're starting from scratch, how do you do that? And there was also a comment from Tamika at the beginning of the call that there's some generational gaps sometimes. Like there can be, we live in an era, taking that into account, of 5 degrees of separation, or 6 or 4, or whatever the number is right now. But we also live in the era of younger CEOs or older CEOs, because those are companies that were established before, or companies that are growing very, very fast. And we have millennial CEOs of big companies. Just look at Facebook, and which is one of the biggest companies in the world. How do you go about bridging the gap? Not only like, hey, can you connect me with this person and that or the other person, but what other things, what any other things can students do in order to bridge that intergenerational gap there is, in order to achieve effective intergenerational networking as well?
Sure. It is a very good question. Just generally speaking, there's a gap already without COVID-19. It's not common to, or not as common to speak with someone that's outside of your generation, especially when it comes to networking and developing those genuine relationships. COVID-19 has exacerbated that. with the fact that we're not going out and meeting in person. But at the same time, there's the other force that a lot of people are now inside their homes. They're working from home. They have, on one hand, they may have a lot more responsibility if they're working adults and parents, and they may have to take care of their kids. But if we're talking about millennials, they typically they do not have that responsibility yet, and they may have more time on their hands than they had before COVID-19, myself included. So I would say that you have that going for you if you're going from trying to reach out to the millennial population. How do you bridge the gap? I would say that the principles still stay the same. You're looking for shared interests. You're looking for developing a genuine relationship where you share something about yourself, so that you're vulnerable, and you share your interests so that they can also share theirs, and develop a that way. I would say outside of that, how do you bridge a gap between the two? I mean, I think I don't have a good answer to it right now, Tamika, but I'm thinking about the people that are, say, older than me, that have really good relationships with me, that call me anytime. They're my close family members, so they have that. But there's just this level of levity, of friendliness, of love and caring for one another. How do you develop that from scratch? I mean, it takes time, but I would say that shared interest is the immediate answer to be able to at least get your foot in the door and start a conversation. But I'm going to think about that a little bit, and I'll let you know if I think of something else.
Yeah. Do you have any other comments about that, Edgar?
Yep. So, I would say, within that, just, we talk about the differences, the generational differences and those things. And so I think we need to do more than just talk about it out loud that we have differences, but we need to dig into it, especially from an individual standpoint, and try to understand, what some of those differences may be, right? And then sometimes it's a perception that we may have that may not necessarily always be reality with every person. And so we can't say, like, I wouldn't want us to generalize it, right? And say that, oh, just because they fall in within this age group or this generation, that they're automatically going to be this way. You have to get to know the person, the individual themselves, right? And then take it from there. And so it is that understanding, right, that there may be some differences there, generational differences, but not blanketing it to where every person that I meet that is in this generation or that generation, that they're automatically going to be this way based on whatever research or things that I've done. And so taking that and understanding that there may be, so when you do encounter the person, if you start to see certain things, right, then you know how to adjust, but not going into it with the mindset that, yes, because they're from this generation, oh, they don't know this, or they're going to look at it this way, or they're going to respond to me in this way, because that may not be, and you could be setting yourself up for a situation to where now you have, in your mind labeled this person as this, or you have put this, unfair, and it couldn't, it may not be a bad label that's put on them, but it just may be something that is totally different than what that person is. And so I just wouldn't want to generalize it. So as you're looking into it, again, understanding that, yes, at times there are differences, and let's do some research on our own individually and learn what those differences may be. So then as we approach them, yeah, we know that that could be a difference, and this is maybe the way that we need to adjust, but also going into it, understanding that this is an individual person, and regardless of the generation, right, they're going to have their own individual mind in the way that they may look at things. And so just going into an understanding, I'm dealing with an individual, and then I'm going to respond in whatever way that they interact with me, but understanding that there may be some differences, and this is how I can maybe, make sure that I'm adjusting and, adapting to whatever those differences are. So it's doing the research, but then also, again, just taking it from an individual standpoint and looking at it that way.
Absolutely. I agree. I totally agree with what you both said and everything that you mentioned. And I just think that this panel was not called the process of networking because it is in fact an art. So there can be some tips definitely for students. There can be some things that you might be able to do, might not be uh, recommended that you do. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, like basically there are some better practices in terms of networking, but there is no clear formula on how to go about it. And I think we've touched a lot of points about tips, what to do, what not to do, how to be better at networking. And I like everything that has been said during this call. And I just think that, I mean, from my personal experience, I've tried to, of course, I've networked and I've done I've made some connections in the past with people that I met in person in some events at school or any other events. So that could have been easier because of that, because I knew them personally at some point in Georgia State or at a career fair or something like that. But there's also some people that I've met completely virtually during this season, during this pandemic, in which everybody is, or almost everybody is at home. Almost everybody's having Zoom calls and WebEx and Teams calls. Sorry. So there are some people that I've connected with entirely virtually. And I think that the best thing that can be done is look for those common things you might have with them, even if it is an interest in some sport, like Simi said, even if it is like a background or you saw that they used to study in a university that you went to as well before. I don't know, any other connection that you might see between that person and you might be helpful in terms of breaking the ice for that first conversation, and then asking maybe for a call and just try to go easy about it. It's not a formula. There's no one single way to do this right, but there are definitely several ways to do it right. And I think that the best advice I could give is just be always yourself. It's easy to maintain some kind of mask for a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, a couple of weeks, but after a while it just fades off. So always try to be honest. Try to have an honest connection with that person, not showing like I'm just interested in what you can give to me or what can I take from you, but also like I know that I have some traits that might be helpful for your company if at some point in the future you might decide to hire me. So focus on that as well. Like, what can you bring into that relationship? Not only what can they give to you, but also what can you give back? And just to start winding down, I want to be very cognizant of everybody's time. And any final thoughts, any final comments you want to mention before we end this call?
Well, thank you for the opportunity again, Alejandro. Feel free to share my contact info with everyone that's here. If you have to leave right now or you don't have that email, it's my first name, Simi, at phoenixriskmanagement.com. Phoenix is spelled unlike the city. It's spelled FENIX, riskmanagement.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Final thoughts. I would say that I think you hit on two really important points, Alejandro. One is to be genuine. You're not going to have the same output, not just in the short term, but also in the long term with your network and with the relationships that you have if you're not genuine. It applies in personal life, it applies in professional life. Two is, I think you touched on this, but be open to failure. It's okay if you don't get a response from everyone that you reach out to. In fact, I would say you're doing it wrong if you get a 100% response rate. Fail, learn, iterate. Do that over and over again to perfect your craft, whether it's networking or something else. And then three, have a long-term perspective about networking. It's not just about what you can do in order to get from point A to point B, but think about someone that might be reaching out to you that is looking to get and further their career. because you know what? Not only are you doing the right thing and you're helping them along in their career, but two, you're networking with that person to a certain extent, and you can share some of the things that you're going through. And then three, they will remember that. I reached out to the guy that got me my first job out of college. And you know what? If he messaged me and said, hey, I have this problem, do you have any recommendations, or do you know anyone that's looking for a job? I would go out of my way to help that person. So plant some seeds now, not just for furthering your career, but also for helping others. Thanks again, Alejandro.
Thank you so much, Simi.
Just want to say thank you all for being here. Great session. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on the panel, especially sitting in with Simi. Both of you all, Alejandro, Simi, great advice. The questions that came in were great as well. And so, again, just thank you for the opportunity. Look at it as what Simi said, long term, right? Not just what can be done for today, but what can be done in the future. And then, do your part, right? When you're looking to make those connections, do your research before even reaching out. Do your research on the company, and start early. Right. One of my pet peeves, I would say, is when someone just reaches out when they see a job posted on State Farm and is like, "Hey, Edgar, can you recommend me for this job?" I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I'm not doing that. I don't know you. Like, so I can't recommend. I can't put my name on something that I don't really know. And then the other one is when people reach out and say, "Hey, Edgar, can you tell me what I would be good for based on my resume?" You should know what you're good for based on your resume, right? What you bring to the table. So do your research. That's what I'm saying. Do your research, so when you come to the table, you have something that you can stand on, and it's not just something blind and just looking for me or anyone else to just do all of the work for you. So do your research as you're reaching out. Continue to be persistent as you continue to reach out, and then, as we talked about before, like, don't be afraid of the rejection. Continue to keep going until you get that opportunity or connect with that person that is going to assist you. So again, thank you all for allowing me to be here. My contact information is in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me by email, connect with me on LinkedIn. I try my best to get back with everyone because I look to build personal relationships.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to you both. Thank you, Simi. Thank you, Edgar, for coming to this panel and just having a chat with us. This was very, very insightful for me, and I know for the rest of the students who were here. The questions they asked, they thanked through the chat as well for your advice. And we will be using this chat as well as part of a video we will post. So this will continue on to other students that weren't able to join us, but definitely thank you very much for just being here and being open to share everything you shared today.
Great meeting both of you too. Thank you, Georgia State, and I look forward to future opportunities as well.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. A great week, sorry, everybody.
Thanks. See you.